Tonight I will be live interactive session, which will be hosted by me, and our special guest is wait, I don't think he needs any introduction as yet, but that will come after. So before I begin, let me tell you guys something. That we all know that 14 months ago, towering into our lives. And since then, life has never been the same for us. Don't we all agree? We got to admit that never in a million years did we think we would face a situation like this one. The whole world hoped and prayed endlessly so that we may one day find a way to get out of this. And guess what? We did. After 8 long months, we have finally found that something, a ray of hope. But it's sad to know that people still refuse to accept it. So viewers, here we are on this live discussion to talk about vaccine hesitancy and to encourage people, especially our people from the state of Meghalaya, to get their shot. Once again, a very good evening to you all. This is Eva Jopneri Rambai, and I will be your host for tonight's program. I welcome you all to our very first live interactive session, which is a part of a campaign led by the 6th semester Media Technology students from the Department of Mass Media, St. Anthony's College, Shillong. The campaign entitled Have Faith Vaccinate is to prevent COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy in Meghalaya, and is followed by a slogan in our local language that is Ptiangikatika de Corona. I extend a warm welcome to our special guest this evening, a man who is known by many, and perhaps he needs no introduction, but here's a little about him. He's a pioneering self-made entrepreneur from Meghalaya with a heart that beats for the well-being of youth and the passion to drive social change. He has made it his life's mission to unlock the true potential of Northeast youth and to initiate impactful interventions for the community. His entrepreneurial journey began at the age of just 17 in spaces as diverse as technology, events and hospitality, telecom distribution, life coaching, and business consulting. I welcome Mr. Mark Longstone. Thank you, sir, for joining in with us for accepting our invitation on very short notice. It is indeed a great pleasure to have you in our midst.
Imajop, I'm afraid I couldn't hear you, but I'm assuming that was an introduction. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
There you go.
I'm sorry from my end as well.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me on your very unique, I think, movement you started here, and I'm very excited to see where this leads. And I also have to admit, I'm very nervous about it being interviewed for something that has to do with such a polarizing issue in our community. So I'm going to give it my best shot. That's a pun on the phrase, get your shot. And let's take that forward, shall we?
Sure. So, sir, you have been such an outdoor person, and we've seen you in many public events and big stages. So how has the pandemic been for you so far?
I think I'm going to take the approach of hope, as I always like to do, and just remind us all that we are definitely in a much better place in terms of awareness within the community, and this beautiful phrase that I like to call collective responsibility. I think there isn't a household or a locality or a village that hasn't been touched by the idea that in order for us to forge ahead, it is going to be imperative for all of us to change the way we've always done things, to face a threat we've never seen before. And the fact that this has actually happened, that at a very conscious, collective level, everyone in community now says it's important to at least adhere to these basic tenets of health, of safekeeping, and of ensuring that transmission does not happen. I've also seen that there is this remarkable movement amongst two very, very important sectors of our community, and I'm going to spend some time speaking about this because this is very close to my own heart as well. Through the entire pandemic, what we've noticed is young people like you and like your friends and like all of us in our generation who aren't yet old at heart, young people have actually found a way to make themselves productive in many unique and diverse solutions frameworks, whether it's volunteering or whether it's picking up a call to call a friend or whether it's participating in a mass social media campaign. I think the voice of this particular pandemic, and I love being able to say this, has been the voice of young people. You've made yourselves heard. And it is only when young people actually step up and say, we can be a very proactive part of the solution and we are not going to be part of the problem. It's only when that happens that world thinking shifts in a completely different direction. So I think that over the course of the last 8 months and more closely back to home in the last 6 months, what has emerged is how your age group, especially the millennial group and the Gen Z group between, I think, the ages of 18 to, I'd say, 28, 29, 30, that bracket. It's beautiful to watch how absolutely confident you are about the need to take part in a mass campaign to vaccinate. You're aware. You know that this is probably the closest thing we have to a solution. And each of you have made a choice to, in some cases, even speak to moms and dads who are apprehensive, speak to brothers and sisters who are in a generation older than us, and explain to them the merits and the clearly constructive tangent of being part of a collective solution to this world problem. So I think that has emerged, the voice of youth and your confidence in being part of the solution. They say, you know, I've frequently seen, even in my own journey, and while building this beautiful team of ours at Avenues, and I don't know if you know this, but our organization actually runs the state COVID helplines. So I'm speaking also as a very large stakeholder in the process of creating a constructive solution to the pandemic for community. And one of the biggest gaps that we've had has been communication. You know, overall communication and the access to information is something that we have had to work on instinctively. So my saying this has a lot to do with the idea that in our team and with the very young people that we work with, what we've noticed is everybody has something to say, but very few people choose to act. Now, when you're talking about this from a global context, it's very easy to talk about numbers. You know, at the end of the day, there are a huge number of people who have said, we're taking the vaccines. And there's also the anti-vaccine community that says, we don't want to take the vaccine for various reasons. Having said that, it has become very, very clear that each of our mandates, hang on, my son's here, you want to say hi to him? Hi to everybody?
Of course.
Sorry. Let me just come and say hi to him. There you go. You can just say hi to everyone, Babu. There he is. You can see his face.
Hi.
But see, the reason why I'm very concerned about being vaccinated is because I need to protect this little guy here. To make sure that as much as I'm part of the solutions framework, I'm also responsible for the health of my family. And I think a lot of dads in my age group or young men and women who are parents understand that that's become so much more important than just what we feel is either a myth or not a fact, and we have to counter that. So I'm going to ask my son to now very politely move out. After you say good evening, you say bye to everyone, Babu. Come on, say bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I'm speaking from the house, so you guys are going to have to forgive me for this. Sorry?
It's alright, no problem.
Okay, so sweetheart, I'll talk to you later, okay?
No, it's a question which Mom wanted me to ask you.
I'm in the middle of a session now, baby.
It's just one question.
Okay. Now, we'll take your questions up after I take everyone else's questions up. Okay, Babu? Okay.
It has to know.
Guys, can you excuse me? This is going to be a very
It's
quick...
alright then. It's
Yeah.
alright.
Okay. Give me a second. Yes, Babu, tell me.
Mom, I wanted to ask you if
I'd love a copy, Babu. Thank you very much. Will you get it for me?
yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just let my son leave the room now. Thanks. Bye, darling. Okay. Forgive me for that small intrusion, but I think that's part of who we are and our families.
Should have said,
So, yeah.
no problem.
So the other group that actually emerged very strong from this entire mix of facing the pandemic has been young entrepreneurs, young men and women who want to ensure that they're able to put food on the table. And I mean that literally as well, because the amount of home kitchens and the sheer quantity of people who are taking part in the home cooking movement that goes out to other families, home to home, has been such a beautiful thing to see emerge. And I'm telling you, especially with entrepreneurs, sometimes the answer has been waiting there, quietly standing by, and no one has seen the opportunity and recognized it. And then there's that perfect moment on our trajectory when suddenly all of those solutions that were waiting to be recognized are there, waiting to emerge. They suddenly have their moment. So I think the entrepreneurial community has really taken off in the last 18 months. And you will see that the answers to common problems that we all face have been solved by local entrepreneurial thinking. And I'm a very big fan of this. So I am going to speak about these two things, the voice of youth being so much stronger than ever before, and the entrepreneurial community choosing to forge ahead even in difficult times. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that as my opening. I hope I've taken a note of hope there into the community.
Sure. Okay, so you spoke about how you've worked with the different COVID task force. Is it? So would you like to talk about the problems that you encountered, maybe?
This is a very interesting space to speak about a couple of, I think, concerns that the health department, the National Health Mission, as well as the district administrations in various districts are currently facing. But I cannot speak on behalf of government on it. Anything I put across right now is in my role as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a friend, as a leader on my team, and most importantly, in a role I really shelter as a coach to a lot of young people out there. It's become very clear to me that the biggest gap that a lot of administrations have to deal with is panic, the access to information, and of course the availability of it when you need it. So when you talk about the first part, panic, I think it's very important to understand that when we pick up calls on our helpline, we get calls from families, from friends of families, from concerned relatives who don't know what the next step is if somebody in the family is tested positive. Now the literature is out there, the research is out there, we know what needs to be done, you see, but translating that knowledge into action has been a huge gap for a lot of people. I think the biggest gap that we can see currently is that ability to translate what you know in a crisis like that into concerted, constructive actions is at the base of many problems right now. Let me put this across as simply as I can. Knowing that you have to take certain steps to socially and physically distance yourself from other people who may have the virus is a very difficult thing to enforce in a household. At the end of the day, many of our homes are smaller. Many of the people who will contract the virus or who have contracted the virus will be in I think community settings with shared accommodation, maybe one bathroom for very large families. How do you protect yourself? How do you ensure that transmission doesn't happen and that you are being a responsible member of the family? The rules are very clear. You check into a Corona Care Center the moment you know you're positive. But even there is this second thing I want to speak about, which is this collective challenge of shame. We're ashamed to say that we're positive. We're ashamed to say that I need to take a constructive step for my family because I'm afraid my neighbors will judge me for being positive and they'll stay away or they'll label me. I think when we started this entire journey through the pandemic, the biggest thing that people had to counter was shame. Just the label of being COVID positive was almost terminal. People would equate it to, I'm going to come close to something terminal in my life. And that wasn't the case. There was so many misconceived notions about the virus, so many misconceived notions about the label COVID-19 positive. And that's why, now things are better. We have the knowledge, we have the awareness, but are we ready to completely commit to being responsible in our homes, then in our communities, and then at the level of a movement as a complete state protecting its own and making sure that it doesn't go and get any worse. The second is, of course, the awareness of, and the communication of information at a readily available moment. Now, when the pandemic started, it was very difficult to sort of have a centralized system of accessing information or ready-made help. Today, we have the 14410 helpline. Pick up the call, or pick up a phone, dial that number, and an agent will answer all your queries, whether it has to do with the travel protocol or with where you can get your next vaccine shot, or what are the protocols you need to put in place in the home when you're positive or somebody in your family is positive, or down to something simple like your rations, where you're going to get that from. So all of this has allowed us to see that access to information, like it is at the start of any crisis, was missing. And now we're in a situation where we're able to say, yes, the government has allowed multiple channels to take place to get out and figure out a way in which citizens can access that information. 14410 is one of them. The second are now the beautifully constructed and efficient war rooms in each of the zones of our district. The war rooms have really proven to be a rallying point for communities who need access to emergency services immediately. The third has been the National Health Mission structure of visiting doctors and nurses who go on from site to site, home to home, helping people who are positive understand the steps they need to take, the medication they need to have, the practices they have to keep in mind in order to deal with the pandemic in their homes constructively. A lot of people think that the number of people who've been vaccinated in Meghalaya are less than 100,000 people, because the truth is no one actually goes into calculating percentages. The actual number of vaccinations already given, the first jabs in the arm, is over 725,000 people already. Now, I know these are numbers that are out there. Just get onto the health websites, check out the stats, and you'll understand the numbers are phenomenal. We're talking about 725,000 people vaccinated in the state. First jabs. I think it's a little under 100,000 people who have taken their second jabs, but that number will rise in the weeks ahead. Now, I want to ask you, if you knew that 7 lakh, I may be wrong with the 25,000, let's say safely it's over 700,000 people. If even you chose not to believe these numbers, I want you to ask yourself, do you know anyone in your circle? Forget about the numbers, okay? Do you know anyone in your circle who has taken the vaccine? Let's talk about the fears. The fear with the vaccine is it's going to make me more sick. It's going to maybe implant a technology that I don't know about. It might change my DNA or my RNA and create a different being out of me. So let's talk about these fears. These are the most common things I've heard. And most importantly, the fact that we are children of a creator who will take care of us, and we have that faith. Now, I want to start this entire conversation by saying, I am a person of faith too. I'm deeply rooted in my own sense of what I believe in. But I will also say I respect anybody else who chooses to say, I do not want to go down the path of a vaccination. No one's wrong or no one's right here. There's only evidence to point to one or two directions, and we have to look at the facts. So I'm going to just speak about facts right now. It is a fact that if you ask anyone right now, and I'm going to make this an interactive thing, think about your circle. I don't know, the first 10 people who come to mind. Think about the first 10 people you know who have been vaccinated. I'm sure you know them in your own circle of friends, your family, your extended family. And then I want you to tell me, have any of those people fallen severely ill because of COVID? And then I want you to tell me how many of those people have actually died. If you can tell me for a fact that one has died after a vaccination, someone that you know, I rest my case right here. The facts cannot be just about the numbers on the screen. They have to be about what you know in your community, from what you have experienced, from the friends that you relate to. Speak to people. Get to know the facts. Have you taken your vaccine? Yes. Have you fallen ill because of COVID? No one's saying you're not going to fall ill. I mean, this whole conception that a vaccine protects you is complete nonsense. It does not protect you 100%. No one ever said that. What it does do is prepare you to be physically capable, stronger to fight the virus when it hits you. For most of us who are healthy, who are fit, if the virus hits us, even if we're not vaccinated, for the most part, I will admit this, it'll probably leave you within 10 to 15 days, it'll test negative. But are you willing to take that chance? Because for a lot of people who I thought were stronger than oxes, here today, gone tomorrow. Shockers. People count is over 900 deaths in our state. Those numbers will only rise if we act irresponsibly. We are now in an environment where we're looking at countries in Europe, countries all over the world packing football stadiums. You know, they're free to do it. They're free to do it. I don't know if you've seen the audiences. Of course, they've maintained a couple of protocols, but in large numbers, fans are showing up in droves. And there is a confidence, a quiet confidence that individuals have who know they've taken their vaccine shots. Now, I want to speak to you about something very personal here, and I hope you all don't mind. You know, the night before I took my vaccine shot, I was terrified. I thought, what is going to happen to me if I fall sick because of this vaccine? My fear was, if I take the shot and I fall ill and I can't go back to my team and I can't work with them and I can't take care of my kids and my family, I would have done the most irresponsible thing I could do. And I lived with that fear for a few hours that night. I couldn't sleep. But you know, sometimes you just commit. You commit because you understand that this is the right thing to do right now. And it is the best bet we all have as a community, as a population, to move ahead and press forward. I had already seen enough months of people taking vaccines. And I turned this argument on myself and I asked myself, Mark, how many people do you know who've taken the vaccine? And I called them all up. I called about 4 or 5 people and asked them, how has it been for you? I went and I chose to talk to those who've gone through it. And I refused to speak to those who hadn't. I wanted to know from those who'd actually done it. And this is my advice to you as well. If you're afraid, if you're scared, if your religion or your faith prevents you from doing it, I respect that. We do. But if there's even an inch of a doubt in you, and you're sitting on the fence, should I not? And I'm telling you, a significant number of people are neither here nor there, you know, Eva. They're just on the fence. They just need to speak to someone like you, like me, who's gone through it, who's been through it, who knows that I'm stronger today than I was 2 months ago when I took my vaccine shot. Mentally, emotionally, and physically, I feel like I have contributed to my country. I don't know at what point that happened, but the day after I took my vaccination shot, I was sick. I was out. I was out for the count for 3 whole days. I couldn't move. I had a fever. I had body aches. I had that where the jab was done, my arm was hurting. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was floating. So I just asked everyone to just give me 3 days off. And in those 3 days, I grew in strength. I'm sure I grew in resistance because that was early May. And for the last 2.5 months, I've been in
and out and having meetings and meeting people and individuals. And you can see me today. I feel stronger. I feel mentally more prepared for the future, and emotionally, which is something that is very difficult it's very difficult to live in doubt. I actually do not live in doubt anymore because I committed to a course of action and I saw it through. And now I know for a fact that even if I do get if I do get the virus, I will not be severely impacted by it. In fact, I think I'm not sure. I might have had a bout of it. I've had the symptoms and I had isolated as well for a while, thinking I might be positive. But in 2 days, I was up and running, And this was all after the vaccine. There are countless stories in our own community of families on my own team. I mean, I'm not going to name names. On my own team of an entire family who chose to vaccinate, from the mother to the daughter to her husband to her brother-in-law to her sister and the kids, children too. And it isn't a very large home. When the husband fell sick because of COVID, was positive, can you imagine the fear? You have your aging mother with you. You have young children in the house. But you've all gotten vaccinated. Now, any normal individual would say that's a cause for great fear and concern. But I love how this family dealt with it. They knew in their minds that a vaccination means we're stronger, we're more resilient. First steps, masks were put on. Second step, lines were clearly drawn within the family. Third step, one bathroom for about 7 family members. But times of the day were allocated. Everything was done by a very step-by-step plan. A husband was positive. Nobody else turned negative. Can you imagine that? That level of discipline. And at the end of 2 weeks, every single member of the family tested negative. And the gentleman who fell sick went through it like a normal flu. Nothing too severe, nothing too hard on him. And there are countless stories like this of people who have gotten vaccinated, have fallen sick, but have breezed through the sickness and the illness and come out stronger, fitter, sometimes weaker, because we still don't know what the overall effect is going to be of the vaccine or of the virus in the long run. This too, I will admit. But I tell you, the joy of knowing that you have committed to being a part of the solution is something else. It makes you feel like you've contributed to humanity. At least this is what it was for me. And the one thing that constantly rings the bell in my mind is, each of you, right? Especially if you're a young person listening to this right now, your character will always emerge in a crisis. A lot of people say crisis builds character. Crisis builds your values. It builds your character. It makes you a stronger person. But I tell you this now, and I know this for a fact after going through crisis after crisis in my own life. Crisis only shows you who you really are. It brings out your worst side, or it can bring out your best side. But the truth is, this is not a crisis that's personal. This is a crisis that's human. It's a crisis of humanity. It's a crisis of global standards. It's a crisis which we will never get out of if we are not all committed to the same path. It's the only time in our lives when we're being asked to commit to a collective course of action that saves the whole world, because you and I choose to be responsible. I cannot utter enough how important it is for us to decide to just one day wake up and say, I refuse to be part of the problem. I refuse to not accept the fact that there is a solution waiting out there. I've seen it for 8 months now. No one's turning into zombies. No one's falling severely ill after the vaccine. The percentages are so minor. I don't want to quote numbers here. I'm just asking you, ask anybody in your community who you know. What have they gone through? And there are always exceptions to the rule. But the general trend, the overall trend, is very, very positive and in favor of those who have taken the vaccine. On the contrary, can you say that there is any proof that if you haven't taken the vaccine, you will not fall ill? If you haven't taken the vaccine, you will not die if it suddenly hits you. Forget about yourself. Is there any guarantee that you will not transmit it to your mother, to your father? If you're in your 30s or in your 40s, you're probably a parent as well. Is there any guarantee that you are not the source of the next big wave? That you will not infect your children and might lose a son or a daughter before it's their time? And can you live with the weight of that choice? A vaccine allows everybody across the ages, across the years, whether it's polio, typhoid, yellow fever, you name it. Vaccines have been the way to go. And in all of those situations, there was always resistance to begin with. But eventually, everybody recognized that collective responsibility, collective, all of us, would have to outweigh personal sentiments. We respect the sentiments, and you can carry on doing exactly what you want to do, but also know the facts. The second most important fact you have to keep in mind is, for anybody who is not vaccinated, whether we like it or not, I'm telling you, whether you like it or not, we don't truly live in a world where we are governed by the idea of complete and committed free will. If we lived in that world, there would be anarchy. Someone very wise told me a couple of days ago that, it stuck with me. And I thought I'd bring it up in this conversation, the idea of civilization. I mean, you talk about being civil. We talk about being polite. We talk about being in a society where there are rules and laws and you follow them. No one's enforcing the rule of law to make you take a vaccine. No one's doing it. No one's telling you have to do this or you're going to be thrown in jail. No one's telling you either that you should get up every morning, eat a good breakfast and go and take a walk. But you do it because you know it's good for you. You know it because it's healthy. There's absolutely no law that tells you should not hit a friend in the middle of a fight. I mean, yes, you can take him to court. I mean, I don't know how much good that would do. But for a lot of things that have to do with our lives and human relationships and collective responsibility, there's an unwritten agreement between you and I. I protect you and you protect me. It's an unwritten social contract. And the idea of being in a civilization or being civil, at least to the most part, is being able to completely control through self-awareness my emotions and to not let my emotions get ahead of me and lead the locomotive of human progress. Emotions are a very critical part. Someone very wise has also said, love, love is the only operating system in the world. The only operating system we actually feel, know, recognize, and grow with. The only time you will actually feel comfortable and responsible is when you know that you've shown humanity enough love, enough self-control, enough mastering of your emotions to not get carried away with drama, myths, and most importantly, superstitions that have no place in a civilization that needs to move forward. Now, we can be brought to a grinding halt by this pandemic. But the only way we will move forward, like we have from any other disease that's been ended on a global scale, is by understanding that we all have that collective responsibility, that social agreement that is not in paper, it's not in black and white. It's about a commitment from the heart to operate from a place of love, of respect, and not from a place of fear. Iba, sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry for that. I was saying that I totally agree with you, sir. And yes, I'm pretty sure that even our viewers would agree with what you have mentioned about contributing to the country and humanity. When you spoke about getting your first shot, it kind of like reminded me about when I got mine. You name it, I experienced all of those side effects which are mentioned on the internet. It was apparently like living hell on earth. But, like you said, contributing to humanity, not only keeping yourself safe, but also to all of our people, the ones we love especially. So, talking about getting our first shot, yeah, it is truly sad, and you know it, that there are still so many people in our state who refuses to get vaccinated, especially in the rural areas. Our vaccine adoption statistics are comparatively low among the northeastern states. How do you think, sir, we can tackle that issue?
You're already taking those first steps. You know, Eva, you and the gang at, I think, the mass media cell of St. Anthony's College are one of many groups that are taking significant steps and strides towards doing the one thing that really matters, you know, building awareness, answering problems through human engagement. I think nothing solves itself, because a lot of problems come from a place of fear. And the only way to counter fear is with love, compassion, and a real sense of caring for your neighbor and for the person in the next district. For the most part, I think the government is doing all it can to get information out. But the one medium that needs to be really used now is the human medium. You, as a person, what are you going to do to reach out to somebody or a group of people who you know just need clarity? You know, our job is not to convince someone. I mean, if you had to convince someone, you'd be living in a world where you're forcing people to see a point of view. That's never going to work. I think what has to happen is, at best, clarify the doubts. Go and be a part of that narrative. I would urge every young person right now, because I know we also, I think, limited on time here. I'm going to answer this in one very brief sentence. If we have to ensure that more people, especially in the rural or suburban areas, get the vaccine shots, it will happen through the heart and not the mind. And the only way that will work is through the power of human connection. It will mean some group, and I'd like it to be young people in the age bracket of 18 to 30. You can shake the world, you know, because you choose to do it. There has to be a group that says, we take it upon our shoulders to go out there, figure out, talk to the health department. Where are you having the most problems in terms of acceptability of the vaccine? If you truly want to go down this path, this is probably one of the best ways you can do it. Figure out where are the gaps, where are the districts and the blocks that need the most counseling or that need the most speaking to. And as a group of concerned young citizens of the state, hold your elders accountable. You've already done enough to inherit the problems we've left behind for you. Now hold them accountable. Ask them to dare to live. I mean, I want to live. You want to live. We all want to get ahead on the planet. But if we're not going to be part of a common solution to a common problem, what we're saying is we're going to play a wait and watch role. And in the meantime, it's that minority. It's not a majority anymore. It's a minority. But that minority, while their opinions and their sentiments must be respected, I mean, you cannot force someone to go against their will. It is very important to work towards clarifying doubts, because of that minority, a majority are not doing it because they don't know enough. Why don't they know enough? There's not enough of us out there. You need to be getting out there. And the only way this is going to be taken forward is if you choose to take that step. What we're doing right here, honestly speaking, this is for an urban audience. It's for people who have data connections. It's for people who have a smartphone, maybe. They want to tune in. And I think to a large part, people who are in the urban settings of our towns and of our cities are more aware and are less afraid because they know the facts. They have access to information. So this approach will not work if we are going to be changing the tide of sentiment and opinion in rural Meghalaya or rural India. You need to have the power of human connection to completely transform opinion from one of fear into one of hope, simply by clarifying doubts and by sharing facts. That's it. How much can the government do? We know we're understaffed. We know that the National Health Mission and the Health Directorate have done the best that they can to fight the pandemic. We have a very responsible opposition in the government that points the gaps out and allows things to be corrected. We have a very responsible administration and district administration throughout the districts. I personally know of officers who sleep for 3 or 4 hours a night now. They haven't had rest for the last, I think, 18 months. The doctors, the nurses, how much will they do? How many households will they personally go to and handhold through this process? You have numbers on your side, guys and girls. If you don't do it, absolutely nobody else will. Hear my words. If you don't do it, no one will. What are you waiting for? for a Facebook Live to tell somebody in a rural village what they should and shouldn't do. In fact, the more time we waste on platforms that are just about visibility and digital, the less responsible we're actually being. I mean, I do want to say that I appreciate this initiative. I'm not saying this is wrong in any way, but I also know we can do more. We can do better. And this is going to be a significant way to turn the tide in rural economies and rural setups. Get people on the ground, you guys, and you don't need to wait for government to tell you to do it. They don't have all the answers. I wish they did. They don't have all the manpower. We wish they did. But you do. And you know you can make a movement happen. You've seen it around the world for climate change. I'm sure this can happen for vaccines too. Hiba, over to you.
Sure, sir, absolutely. And sir, you spoke about how we cannot force a person to get their jab, yeah? So
Yes.
I think you've already known that there has been a great argument going on that no one, be it the authorities or the health department, they cannot force a person to take their vaccine. Yes, of course, we can create awareness like these, like you have said, but the individual has his own right. The Constitution also, it guarantees that right and really cannot force anyone to get inoculated. So, sir, can you tell me how thin is the line between creating awareness and forcing someone? How can we create a balance between, create a balance between not forcing anyone and also keeping yourself safe and also your community?
So I don't think that there's even a line. They're in two different worlds, you know. One has to do with free will, and the other has to do with knowledge and facts. I mean, I don't want to club the two together. I think that one leads to the other, and one has an impact on the other. For example, the more facts I know, and the more information I have, and the more truths I verify, the more likely I am to take action, maybe for or against the vaccine. So I don't want to draw distinctions here. What I do want to talk about is what you spoke about, and how, you know, this question is actually a very, I think, polarizing thing. You know, when you speak about the Constitution and fundamental human rights and our duties and responsibilities as citizens, we also have a duty to not infringe on the rights of others. You know, is life a right? Of course it is. Is health a right? Of course it is. Is the responsibility to not spread a disease a responsibility? Hey, you have to answer that. Do you feel responsible for your job or for your role in spreading a pandemic? Are you going to be part of that spreader network, or will you make the choice to perhaps embrace your fundamental duty as a citizen and do what you can to prevent that from happening? There are many ways you can do it. Vaccinations are one of them. I'm not saying it's the only solution, but it's most probably the closest we're going to get for a long time to a solution. I remember the idea of free will. This is going to take us down a very long and winding road. So I'm just going to stick to my guns on this, and I'm going to keep this personal. My opinions do not reflect the opinions of other people, and I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone when I say this to you. How much free will do you really have when the government puts in checks and balances to ensure that people who are not vaccinated are not allowed to travel internationally, let's say? How much free will do you have when someone says to you that you're not allowed to enter my state if you don't have your vaccinations? How much free will can you exert on your organizations if your leadership tells you, we only want vaccinated individuals on our teams? Where is free will then? At that point in time, you have the free will to walk out. Now, would you walk out of the privileges that come with your citizenship? Would you walk out because of free will of the privileges that come with your job and your income and your salary? These are all very sensitive things to speak about. But one must ask oneself, how much free will do we actually enjoy when we've handed over the reins of power and decision making to an elite political superstructure that we voted into power? I'm not going to go down further than that road, but I will tell you, in this moment in time, you really have to remember vaccinations are not the law of the land right now, at least not yet. I don't think it's ever going to be a law that must be enforced on every human being on the planet. But if it gets there, I doubt you and I would have much to say or much to fight about. We might raise our voices and create a massive hue and cry. But if it's the law, it's the law. I mean, it becomes the law of the land. So right now, if you have the privilege of free will, it is a basic human privilege to be able to choose what you want in you. I think we all, as a community and as citizens of our country, need to respect everybody's choices. There is no debate about this. The only thing we can do is choose, number one, to not look down on anybody who we think has made a wrong decision. See, there are no wrong decisions. They're just decisions we learn from. Now, if because of a vaccination not having been taken by me, a lot of people will look at me and say, you're making a mistake. I think that very approach is at the heart of the problem. It's creating two camps and it's polarizing the world very quickly. Instead of that, a human conversation that comes from a place of empathy and wanting to understand the other person's point of view, and in return, the other person wanting to do the same as well, truly being open, is the only real way to effect any kind of change. Anything else is either forced, out of fear, or because you're compelled to do it by circumstances beyond your control. Free will only come into play when somebody chooses to be open. First of all, accept and be open to the facts. And when you use that free will to then act on those facts, you may say, hey, the vaccine is not such a bad idea. And you might say to your family, I'm going to lead the way and do it first. And if nothing happens to me, God forbid, why don't you follow me? It starts with one. You may think that going out and talking to one village member has no impact. You'd be wrong. It takes just that one to spark a small revolution where there was none to begin with. It just takes one. Someone bold, someone brave, and someone free to choose to take that step. That's free will to me.
Sure, so it's always about taking up responsibility and how we should keep up with it. And sir, I would like to say that your words and actions have always inspired people, especially young people like me, youths like me who look up to you. What would your message be to us, especially the ones who are hesitant to take their jab?
First of all, let me just begin by saying that those kinds of questions make me feel very, I don't know, I cringe when I hear them, because first you started with a leading line that says, my words and thoughts inspire others. Frankly speaking, I don't want my words to inspire you, because I'm not a perfect man at all. I think all I can suggest is, if my actions lead to something that's positive in our settings or in our community, look at the actions, don't listen to my words. And this should be your policy for everybody. In this particular setting, I want to leave you with 4 thoughts. And remember that I haven't always been the sort of person who's been able to so clearly understand where we need to go. I have had my moments of complete confusion and utter dismay at myself for letting myself down. But if you were really asking me, I mean, this is a genuine question. I know you want to ask me to leave with some words of advice. So I'm going to try and break it down into 4 areas. Okay. Let's talk about 4 L's. Okay. Okay. Let's make it 3. So it's simple for everyone. Okay. 3 areas. Number 1, living. Are we really happy with the way we're living right now? Is this life? I miss being able to get into a workshop and watch someone smile and hold them by the shoulders and say, I'm with you, man. You can do anything you want. I miss that human connection. This is not living to me. This is imprisonment in a prison that we have the power to get out of. Just imagine a situation where Meghalaya, every single person, I'm just thinking out of the box here. Imagine a situation where every single person, like we did for polio and for other things, says, I am COVID-19 free, or I have taken the vaccine. Everybody. I'm choosing as a government to lock everybody down into a statewide lockdown for 2 weeks to see if any cases emerge. And none do. And those that do get healed and come back home. 2 weeks after that, everything opens up. Everyone's vaccinated. Everyone who was sick and had to fall sick has fallen sick or has recovered or has moved on. We're out and we have no fear. Because there's no way anybody can bring anything into that mix because we're all vaccinated and we've all gone through 2 weeks of waiting for symptoms to show up and nothing happens. Imagine that world. I mean, just let's say that we all woke up on the 1st of September and said to ourselves, let's spend the whole month of September making sure we all get vaccinated, making sure that every single person in our communities understands the rules of a lockdown. We stay closed in for 2 weeks. At the end of those 2 weeks, you know what would happen? You would have zero transmission. You'd have zero positivity in the state. You'd have a situation where you and I can get back onto a football stadium and cheer for our favorite teams. We can go back to seeing movies on a weekend. We can go back to enjoying a lovely community setting at a large Bamkhana in a village. I don't know, like a big meal together. All of these things can happen only if we feel that we have really, really taken every precaution we can to make sure we can live. And you're a very big part of that equation. If you're listening to this right now, you probably either want to attack me for having a stand on taking a vaccine, or you want to back me for saying we should. But that doesn't have to be the case. All you have to do, if you're listening to this, is to choose and dare to live. I'm using that phrase again. You know, it sounds so corny and cheesy, but it's not. Dare to live. It means make the choices to choose to let other people live. Forget about yourself. If you don't care about you, that's fine. But you are living in a community setting. And by not doing the responsible thing, that's now backed by evidence, by empirical data, by numbers. You had enough time to see this in action. You would know if this was a crisis. You would know if the vaccines were an eyewash. You would know if the vaccines were leading to something worse. At this point in time, you have to be able to step into yourself and think about more than just you. There's the people around you. And you have to allow them to dare to live because you're making the right choices. So I talk about that. Live and life. Second L I want to leave you with amongst yourselves is a complete sense of not just any kind of love, unconditional love. I cannot impress upon how superfluous this might sound to those who don't get me, but if you get me, understand what love means to me. To me, love doesn't mean falling in love with someone. To me, love is being able to see that everybody has a story. Everybody has a journey. Everybody has a reason for being where they are. And the only true love that's unconditional in the world is the love that emerges from respect and acceptance of everyone. You cannot polarize the world to arrive at a solution. Two negatives will not make a right. I mean, it might, minus into minus is plus, but not in this case. Two wrongs will not make a right. So that ability to look at a narrative beyond what you think is right is the only way to build an inclusive world where people want to listen, where people choose to clarify, and where people choose to move ahead. So that would be the second thing. Live, love, and finally, for those of you who are bold enough, absolutely no one has ever said that leadership waited for me. Oh, someone said you will be a leader one day. And in 6 months from now, I woke up and that was my dream. It was on a silver plate given to me, leadership. The third L is leading. And leading never has a perfect time. You make the time to lead a perfect time because you choose it to be so. If you're going to wait to lead, you will wait forever and ever and ever. And before you know it, it'll never be the perfect time. So if I had to tell you and leave you with 3 thoughts, it would be this. Live with love and respect and acceptance, and use that to lead. Live, love, lead. That's it for me.
Sure, sir, that requires no further explanation. I'm sure all of us will keep in mind the powerful L's that you have shared with us this evening. So moving on to the next part of our session. So if it's all right with you, shall we tend to the few questions that our viewers have sent to us via Facebook?
All right.
At this point, I would like to request my team to check on some messages if we have any. All right, I think there is none. I'm pretty sure everything that needs to be said have been mentioned clearly, and once again, I don't think you need any further explanations. So whatever you have said, you've said it so perfectly, so clearly, and we're really grateful for that. All right, so everyone, we've come towards the end of our program for tonight. And before we wrap up this session, once again, on behalf of our campaign director, Professor Rajani K. Chhetri, and the team, I would like to convey our sincere gratitude to Mr. Mark Lifelong Stone for sharing your valuable time with us, and also not to forget all of our viewers for joining in this evening. I'm sure that the information shared with us will remain on till the campaign ends and also for the rest of the year. And it was of great benefit. I have to mention that.
Iba, if I may interrupt you, I don't think this conversation would be really complete if I didn't say a warm shout out to my friends here. Dr. Cherry, thank you for your leadership. I think you always have had these very innovative and inspiring ideas. And in fact, it comes from your kids and your students. So we're very proud of the mass media department always. And we have Rajani here, who's a good friend, and whose husband and her, I think, have all been COVID warriors as well. So thanks, Rajani. Thanks for having me on the program. And to the mass media department, I hold your department. I don't know why. I have a lot of friends in the department who I really respect and look up to. All your teachers, all your tutors. And I just want to say that it's campaigns like this that genuinely do make a difference and are the start of something. And I would like to thank St. Anthony's College and the mass media department for taking this step. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for this kind and warm words. So with this, I end tonight's live session. I wish you all a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you, Kublai, and have faith, vaccinate. Thank you, sir.